Welcome back to Tea with the OT. I'm your host, Rebecca Maddie, a pediatric occupational therapist and lover of a good cup of tea for the most part. I don't know much about tea. I'm pretty much a novice. I prefer coffee generally, but it goes nicely with the title, right? So every episode, I discuss a topic that is important to occupational therapy, and I share my thoughts on a random cup of tea that I've chosen for the day. So the tea that is working with us today is white pomegranate organic white pomegranate tea from Trader Joe's. I've had this one before. It's usually pretty mild. I don't know, but I may have had it in a previous episode actually. Don't hold me to that. So anyway, today we're diving into a topic that is not only practical, but it's super important when it comes to starting therapy with the right person. Before I dive into that, letting you know my tea is steeping. It's still pretty hot, but at the end of the episode, I will give it a little try and give you my rating on a scale of 1 to 10 from a novice point of view. All right, let's dive into the actual episode today and what we're going to be talking about. So whether you're a parent looking for a therapist for a child or you're just someone looking for support for yourself, it can be hard to know what to ask when reaching out to different therapists. So beyond the obvious, do you take insurance? Which is of course a very important question and one I get probably the most often from new potential clients. There are other questions that can give you a better feel for whether a therapist is a good fit. And so I want to go over those questions today and just some suggestions from my own perspective of what might be some really good things to ask somebody that may potentially become your or your child's therapist. And you can ask these questions at like an initial phone call or a consultation, and these can help you feel more confident, informed, and prepared as you start this process. So the first question I think would be a good one to ask a potential therapist is, how do your clients typically pay for services? This one gives you a peek into how the practice runs. So do they accept private pay only? Do they work with certain insurance companies? Or do they provide super bills for reimbursement? Are there payment plans available? Understanding the financial side up front, it helps you plan for your future service with that therapist. So as an example of different types of things that you might encounter, personally, my Honeybee OT payments are done on a package basis. So all of my clients pay at the beginning of the month for their services they're going to receive the rest of that month. Other therapists might have you pay after each session, and then you get the invoice or whatever that might be. So it's important to ask this question in addition to what insurances do you take, if any. The next question that might be a good one to provide you some insight is, what does a typical session look like with you? So this gives you insight into their style as a therapist. Is it play-based, more structured? Do they use certain approaches like sensory integration, CBT, or a trauma-informed lens? And for individuals, this can give you a sense of whether the therapist's tone and methods align with your preferences. So for me, when I speak with a new client, I always like to tell them typically what the session is going to look like is, I will start with a movement-based activity because a lot of my approach is sensory integration and play-based. And so I like to get the kids moving and see kind of where they're at for the day. Then we move into the lesson that we're learning about that's targeting their goal. And then we intermix movement and play-based therapy throughout the session in order to meet the child where they're at and maintain their engagement for that hour. And so asking this question will give you that insight for what a typical therapy session is going to look like, and then help you make an even more informed decision about which therapist might best align with your preferences. Next question I recommend: if you're accepting new clients, what time of day are you available for sessions? So this is another great follow-up to this is, do you book recurring sessions or do we schedule week to week? So some therapists set aside weekly times for each individual client. So this client is always on Tuesdays at 4:30, or Other therapists might do it a little differently and just schedule the session as you go. So I've had therapists where at the end of every session, I tell them my availability next week and they share theirs, and then we find a time that works for both of us. So depending on how your weekly schedule looks, if you prefer something that's more locked in, if they can accommodate that, or if you have a schedule that shifts a lot, how are they going to be able to accommodate that as well? So that's going to just help you figure out. It may not be like a make or break question, but it'll just help you get an idea of what to expect when you're scheduling with that therapist. Next question I recommend asking is, what happens if I or my child gets sick and we can't make it to our session? So this is going to open up the conversation around cancellation policies. So I will say that every client that I interact with, or whoever is coming onto my caseload, receives my cancellation policy in writing so that they have it for reference. But I don't know anyone that actually goes through and reads it before they are faced with the time when they need to cancel. So it's important to even get this information up front so that you can open up that line of communication and you can understand ahead of time what it's going to look like if you do need to cancel last minute. Are you still going to be charged for the full session? Do you have like a credit that you get to use? And that just allows you to feel a little better moving forward, because life happens, adults have emergencies, kids get colds, and so then you can stay informed about what that's going to look like if you need to cancel. Okay, moving on to question number 5 that I recommend you asking a potential therapist. How can I stay in the loop? This one is for parents. How can I stay in the loop about how sessions are going and knowing my child's progress? Communication is key, especially when we're not in the room for your child's sessions, if that is the case. Some therapists offer regular updates. Others prefer check-ins at set intervals or at the end of your child's session. Make sure that their style and their communication is going to match your needs for collaboration, because as a parent, you are part of your child's team, obviously. And so you need to stay in the loop about their progress and what is happening in each session. Again, so that helps you be able to carry it over. So asking this up front allows you to just kind of figure out, what is it going to look like to collaborate with this therapist and meet my child's needs. For individuals, you can ask a question similarly, and that question would be like, how will we monitor my progress? It's empowering to know how to track your own changes, how you'll track your changes, set goals, and check in on what's working and what's not. A good therapist should be open to discussing your progress and adjusting the course as needed. So just asking this question up front will allow you to kind of put yourself into the frame of thinking like, okay, we're going to check in each week about how I feel like I'm progressing on certain goals, or we're going to check in once a month on how I've seen this progress move forward. So just asking that simple question about how progress is going to be monitored and how you're going to be communicated with if you are the parent of a child is going to allow you to just be more in the know, and again, make that informed decision about what therapist is going to be right for you. Another great question, question number 7. How long do clients typically work with you? And how do you determine when someone is ready to move on with therapy? So this one can really be eye-opening. It tells you if the therapist is goal-oriented, if they view therapy as short-term support, or if they provide more long-term services. Knowing this can help you feel more grounded in the process and gives you a sense of what the journey ahead is going to look like, because oftentimes we may not recognize, like, this work that I'm about to do is going to take months. And I am guilty of this, but I want things to change quickly, and I want to just meet the goals and do the homework that the therapist is assigning me. But that's often not how the goals that we set in therapy typically work, unfortunately. We are laying the foundation for long-term changes and positive changes in our lifetime. So those things are going to take time. And so just asking the question of how long do clients typically work with you will just give you some insight and ground you in what the process is going to look like ahead. So those are some questions that I just recommend you asking a potential therapist, whether you're a parent searching for someone to work with your child, or if you're someone exploring therapy yourself. These are good questions to ask during that initial consultation to get to know the therapist, their style, and whether they are going to be a good fit for you. If there's some things that they answer that you're like, I'm not sure about that question, always ask follow-ups. If you're still unsure, you can always give it a try for a couple of sessions, and if it just doesn't feel like the right fit, it's more important to find a therapist that you are feeling supported by and you are meshing with than it is to kind of keep pushing forward and forcing something that may not be there, because the therapeutic relationship is just as important as the goals you're setting with that therapist. So if you found let me back up a little bit. Remember that therapy is deeply personal, so it's important and it's okay to ask questions, trust your instincts, and keep looking until you find the right fit. If you found any of this information helpful, I would really appreciate you to shoot me a message or post a comment below about some questions that maybe you've asked therapists or potential carers in the past that have been helpful for you to gain those insights, and we can share with each other about what has worked for us in the past to get some information and some insights about how to find the right therapist for us. So leave any comments about other questions you might have or questions you've asked other therapists, and don't forget to subscribe to the Tea with the OT channel for more conversations about occupational therapy, parenting, and just finding the rhythm in life and things that I can offer as an occupational therapist. All right, my tea should be relatively cooled off, so let's give it a try. I'm going to rate this one 4 out of 10. No explanation. Just that's the gut feeling that I'm going to go with for today. 4 out of 10 on this one. Definitely needs some honey. I'd love to hear your thoughts on how you are seeking out therapists and how helpful you've been finding the Tea with the OT channel. And I just welcome any sort of feedback or questions. Please like and follow the channel if you haven't already. That just helps support me and get the content out to more people and more parents that could use the support. All right, I appreciate you so much for being here, and I will see you next time. Cheers.